This is our fourth video lecture covering Lesson 4 in Clayton Croy's A Primer to Biblical Greek. In this lesson, we will cover second declension nouns. To begin with a brief review, remember that Greek is an inflected language, which means that the different functions of words in a sentence are indicated by their form rather than by the order of the words. There are three parts or characteristics of each noun: gender, number, and case. We talked about how case determines or shows the relationship between different words. We mentioned as well that there are three different patterns or declensions for forming Greek nouns. In the last lecture, we learned about first declension nouns. We also talked a good bit about case. And so you'll recall that there are 5 cases in Greek. The nominative is the naming case, often indicates the subject or the predicate nominative. The genitive is the defining case, often indicates possession. The dative is the relating case, and it often indicates the indirect object. The accusative is the limiting case and often indicates the direct object. And vocative is the case of direct address. And like I said in the previous lecture, these are illustrative examples of the functions of case, and more of them will be added as we move along in the course. So let's learn our second pattern of nouns, known as second declension nouns. These are largely masculine or neuter nouns. They typically end in os for masculine or on for neuter. And they have very similar endings in the neuter, which means that on occurs in the singular nominative, singular accusative, and in the singular vocative. And that a occurs in the plural nominative, plural accusative, and plural vocative. Like we did with first declension nouns, let's talk briefly about the basic pattern for second declension nouns. And that is basically os, u, o, on, a, oi, on, ois, us, oi. All right, and so let's see a chart of a second declension noun. This is a masculine noun. The Greek word is logos, which means word or speech. It would go logos, logu, logo, logon, loge, logoi, logon, logois, logus, logoi. Here is an example of another second declension noun. This one is neuter in gender, and it goes ergon, ergu, ergo, ergon, ergon, erga, ergon, ergois, erga, erga. Here again is a simplified chart showing just the endings of second declension nouns, especially the masculine nouns, because you'll remember that the neuter, nominative, and accusative are slightly different than the masculine nominative and accusative. And so just some brief ways to connect this with first declension nouns that you've already learned. The first is that they are very similar in the plural forms. So there are different vowels. So we see oi and ois and us and oi in second declension noun. But in first declension noun, those would be I, ice, and os. You also see that there's the use of the iota subscript in the dative singular, and then the iota again in the dative plural. And finally, you see the presence of the nu in the accusative singular on. Just a few final notes with regards to this declension. Please note that neuter plural nouns typically take singular verbs. So for example, the Greek sentence graphe tekna logus, we would translate that as children write words. So even though tekna is the neuter plural nominative from teknon, so that's a plural noun, but it takes graphe, and you recognize that ending a is a singular. A few notes on translating the practice and review exercises. Again, we covered this in the last lecture, but let's just remind ourselves again. Find the main verb, then look for the noun that is in the nominative case, which will hopefully give us the subject. Then find the noun in the accusative case, which provides us with the direct object, and then begin to identify and analyze other nouns and their cases. So here is the first exercise from the practice and review for lesson 4. Graphe anthropos logus zoes adelphe. All right, so let's begin by finding that main verb. It was the same verb that we just had in a previous slide, graphe. And so graphe we can analyze that ending as a singular, so present active indicative, third person singular. So that means we're looking for something in the nominative case that's singular. And so when we're looking to find the nominative case, there's only one nominative case in the entire sentence, actually, and that is anthropos. And we know that because of that os ending at the end. That tells us that we are in the nominative singular of a masculine noun. Then we're going to find the accusative, and again, once again, we are fortunate that there's only one noun here that has an accusative case, and that's lagus. And you can see there with the ending us at the end, that signals that you are a masculine plural accusative noun. And then we are going to look for other nouns in the sentence, and we have two of them, zoes and adelphe. Now again, these are feminine nouns, which is what we discussed in the previous lecture. And we see the characteristic endings ace and a, and so those indicate genitive and dative respectively. And so if we were to translate this, we would translate it as, a man writes words of life to a sister. So a few things just to point out. Note that I've translated anthropos not as the man, but as a man, singular, without the definite article the, but rather with the indefinite article a. And then the genitive here has the limiting function of. It tells us specifically what sorts of words a man writes. And they're words of life. The zoes there is in the genitive. And finally, adelphe is in the dative case. And here it's functioning as the indirect object. It's telling us who receives the action of writing the words of life. And it's a sister. So again, the final translation, a man writes words of life to a sister. That is the end of this lecture on lesson 4, second declension nouns. Thank you for your attention.